Now I'm going to talk about number 13 in chapter 26. I like this question because with what we're doing with game theory here, the strategic behavior, oligopoly is just a very few firms um, with a similar product, limited entrance and exit. So that part, in terms of fitting oligopoly in with other firms, other types of firms, that's pretty small potato stuff. That's old hat for us. The introduction of something new here is the strategic behavior side that you dive into when you look at oligopoly. And so that's where I'm really focusing these videos and these questions. So I like this one because it helps us to apply this thinking to our own behavior and maybe ask ourselves, well, what is my dominant strategy? And if this is a dominant strategy that's not in my best interest in a non-cooperative game, not in our best interest, me and maybe the other player, then how can I turn this into a cooperative game? And so the way to do that, you can't do that unless you're thinking about how the other players respond to incentives, because it's all about incentives. That's what the payoffs are incentives. So here we're looking at different kinds of firms, the firms that we might have heard of, and we are just saying, well, how do they get paid? Because getting paid is an incentive, right? So it's starting to get us thinking, going down that road. So that's why I have this in here. Here we go. Number 13, consider the following lists and classify each item according to the appropriate type of two-sided market. This is an audience making or a matchmaking or a shared input or a transaction-based type of market. And write a one-sentence answer justifying your classification. Hint, you may wish to check out the firm's websites to assist in answering this question. So the first one is MasterCard.com. I think everybody knows what MasterCard is. So MasterCard is a platform for linking people making payments with credit cards to banks that clear the payments in a transaction-based market. So MasterCard gets paid by the transactions that they receive. That's their incentive, is to have more transactions go through MasterCard. So letter B, FreeBSD.com. That's an open source operating system utilized within shared input markets. So the more people that put things on this thing, the better off they do. So their incentive is to have as many users as possible of their open source operating system. And then plentyoffish.com is a platform that links people seeking romantic matches in a matchmaking market. So their incentive structure at plentyoffish.com, I have some friends that have used that service, so I don't know what it's about. I only know what they tell me, and that just makes me kind of smirk. But it's some kind of a matchmaking service, and so the more users they have, the better they do. So their incentive is to have a lot of users, but it's a matchmaking service. So they can't have all of one side of the market. They're a matchmaking service, so they have to have both sides of the market, generally speaking, male and female, right? So they need to make sure they're attracting a balance, or they're not winning. They can't do well. So that's just something, as you approach a firm like this or institutions like this, you have to ask yourself, well, how do they do well? If they only attract heterosexual males, they won't do well because there's nobody to match them with per their interests, right? So just another thing to think about as you're thinking about incentives and how institutions may react in their interactions with you. WSJ.com, that stands for the Wall Street Journal, which is a media outlet. You could have put in any media outlet you want to. They provide business news reporting to attract an audience to advertisers within an audience-making market. So any news.com, you name it, Fox, CNN, Wall Street Journal, CNBC, I like a lot. Now, the New York Times might be an exception. The New York Times gets to a little bit have a different revenue stream because they actually charge. I think because of their reputation and name, they're able to charge still subscription services. But most news services, like the Wall Street Journal, does charge for subscription as well. As a matter of fact, they do well by having an audience, and so I guess it's not mutually exclusive. They do well by having an audience because they can charge for that subscription. But as I think everybody seeing this knows, audience making services also do well by selling advertising because they can say, here is the size of my audience. If you advertise with us, you can reach this whole audience. So the bigger the audience, the more people they attract of any kind, the more views that they draw in, the better off they'll be. So that's the kind of incentive that an organization like this or like these, that's the kind of incentive that they are responding to. And so as you approach probably not these organizations, but organizations like these, you know where they are, you know what they're about. And that's the name of the game here.